be carrying 2,000 tons of water, baby food and other aid for people in the east of Ukraine. The convoy of some 280 trucks are stationed near the Ukraine border, awaiting permission to cross over.
There were no instances of shooting in the past week over the border crossing points of Donetsk and Gukovo. However, I spoke about, we hear, and you have heard also that you can hear that there's some artillery shootings that are happening. It happens during the night, but also during the day.
Kiev and NATO have said they fear Russia, which they say has massed more than 40,000 troops near the border, and that it will invade East Ukraine. However, Russia says it is only conducting military exercises and has no plans to invade. It also denies supporting rebels in eastern Ukraine with arms and funds.
Now, for more on the situation in Ukraine, I'm being joined live via Skype by the Voice of America's Gabe Joslow, who is in Kiev. Gabe, thank you so much for joining us on The World Today. Now, I'd like to start with asking you, concerning that attack which took place yesterday, has there been any claim of responsibility so far?
No, nobody's going to claim responsibility for this attack. You have the Ukrainian government accusing the rebels of being responsible, and the rebels are saying that this was an attack by a Ukrainian Air Force. This is sort of typical in this kind of war where you see both sides blaming each other, but it's very hard to get independent confirmation of what's happening. The U.S. and the EU have all expressed concern about this, as have human rights groups, because the one thing that is clear is that the people who were killed were simply civilians who were trying to escape from some heavy fighting in Luhansk province.
Now, there's been fighting in the city of Luhansk, but now the military is saying that the city is being recaptured block by block. How valid is that statement?
Ukrainian military has said that it's making this incremental progress in taking on and reclaiming control of some of the last rebel strongholds, including Donetsk and Luhansk. Again, it's a little bit difficult to confirm just how well they're doing. You'll also hear, there's a lot of propaganda from both sides, so the separatists will say that they're still in control and that they're receiving additional support from the Russian border, and Ukraine has been saying that its troops are encircling these areas and are closing in. The fact is we know that there's been a lot of heavy fighting, but in terms of whether there's an end in sight or Ukraine is likely to capture the city soon is really hard to tell from now.
Okay, but I'd like to ask you now that I'm rounding up. Earlier on, you mentioned a meeting that is scheduled to hold between the president of Russia and Ukraine tomorrow. Any hope of a diplomatic solution being reached when it's over?
Yeah, this is a meeting that's going to be scheduled for next week in Belarus between Vladimir Putin and Petro Poroshenko of Ukraine. So there's always hope that something could come out of these deals. The two sides, at least, Russia and Ukraine, have been talking mostly through European mediators about some of the outstanding issues between them, which includes not only the conflict, but natural gas trade, which is a major issue between the two countries. So, so far, the two sides have not really been able to put together any kind of a deal, and Russia has not really vocally admitted that it's supporting these rebels, despite a lot of evidence that is the case. Then again, Russian president has made some remarks recently suggesting that he does want to see peace soon. So maybe this time, again, with European cooperation, we might see some more progress and some hope for peace.
Well, thank you very much. I've been speaking with the Voice of America's Gabe Joslow, who is live in Kiev. Thank you so much for speaking with us, Gabe. Now, in other news, the United Nations Agency for Refugees is launching a major aid operation to reach more than 500,000 people displaced by fighting in northern Iraq. Tents and other goods will be sent to the Kurdish city of Erbil via air, road and sea. Meanwhile, the strategically important Mosul Dam says Kurdish and Iraqi forces have retaken it from Islamic State militants, that's the IS militants, and the IS forces have recaptured large parts of northern Iraq in recent weeks. Aid will first be sent by air from Jordan beginning tomorrow, and more goods will be sent by road from Turkey and by sea from Dubai as well as Iran. An estimated 1.2 million Iraqis have been displaced so far in 2014, and more than 500,000 from fighting in the Anbar region, and another 600,000 displaced from conflicts around Mosul and more recently Sinjar. Meanwhile, Western powers are stepping up efforts to stem the advance of IS by supporting Kurdish and Iraqi government forces in the northern part of the country. Well, for more on this, we're being joined by the Voice of America's Jeff Young, who is live in Washington. Jeff, thank you so much for speaking with us today. Now, we understand the Western powers are stepping up efforts to stem the advance of IS. Could you give us an idea of what those efforts are?
Well, there's things you see up front and there's things that you don't see. Let's talk about the things up front first. We have airstrikes. We have been coordinating attacks on Islamic State positions. We've been knocking out artillery. We've been knocking out convoys. We've been taking them out where we can find them, okay? And that's for twofold purposes. Number one, to drive them away from the Mosul Dam. It's also to try to cut off their sense of being able to advance, to move forward toward Erbil or toward any other significant population center in Iraq. Now that's the public side. Now let's go to the back side of the story. Intel. Why do they strike a particular place in a particular time? They do it because they have intelligence information. And that intel comes from a number of different places. There's United States intel, there's intel from some of our allies, there's information on the ground from Peshmerga units, from the Kurdistan regional government. When you have intel, you know where to strike, and that can make your strike effective, and that can help turn the tide.
Well, Jeff, the IS militant group has released very disturbing images accompanied with statements like, "We will drown all of you in blood," and all those statements have been targeted at the United States. Now, how is the government responding to those threats?
Well, you have to, first of all, look at what they're capable of doing. If they want to put up a video and wave a black flag and say, "America will drown in its own blood," that's great. That gives them a chance to watch their video and slap each other on the back and cheer. Let's go to the practical side of this. What do they expect to do? Crash a couple of airliners into the World Trade Center? Is that a possibility? Do you see where I'm going with this? Most of the video, most of this bravado that you're seeing from the Islamic State is to pump themselves up. It's to recruit new jihadis to the fight. It's to give themselves a sense of power and omnipotence. As to what real threat this poses to the United States, there's a threat. We have borders, we watch them. We have groups that we have under surveillance. But just putting up a video and saying the United States will drown in blood isn't anything to make us cower in the basement by any stretch of the imagination.
Well said. Now, finally, Jeff, just before I let you go, how do you see all this playing out in the end? Will peace be restored to Iraq? Will IS be overcome? How do you see it playing out?
Well, you know that I spent a good chunk of July in Kurdistan. I was there, I was in the refugee camps, I was in close contact with leaders of the Kurdistan regional government. I was also out with the Peshmerga out on patrol. I see several things unfolding here. First of all, there has to be political reconciliation. The new government in Baghdad, the central government, the post-al-Maliki regime, has to be inclusive of Sunnah, of all the various factions. Everyone has to have a seat at the table and a plate of food. Those who are left behind or left without are the ones who pick up a gun. The second thing that is also unfolding in all of this is the move toward independence by Kurdistan. I saw it and felt it very, very strongly. Now, right now, you have government of Iraq troops, Baghdad troops, working side by side with the Peshmerga. Actually, what I saw in reality is the Peshmerga are up front, and GOI, the government of Iraq forces, are basically behind. But for purposes of appearances, they're fighting side by side to liberate their country and drive the Islamic State out of their territory.
Jeff, thank you so much for speaking with us on The World Today. We really appreciate your time. I've been speaking with the Voice of America's Jeff Young, who is live in Washington. And we'll take a break now. When we come back, the United States government is giving the Nigerian government thumbs up for how it's been handling the situation caused by the Ebola crisis. We'll have details for you shortly.